Hello, my divine, infinite human beings. You're all that is, ever has been, and ever shall be. And greetings, greetings, greetings. Welcome to the Infinite Human Talk Show. I'm your host, Elizabeth Monroy, and this is part two of a fascinating series that we've done about the roots of Tartaria. And now we discussed that last week with Oliwia in part one. And this week, we're going to talk about how we are returning to that, how we are getting back on the correct timeline, since Tartaria is basically the true origins of our planet and the correct timeline. So, I'm going to bring the very talented, very intuitive, very well schooled in Keylonic Science, Oliwia Estada. I'll let you pronounce your name, Olivia. And we'll get down to it, to this wonderful, fascinating conversation. Welcome, welcome, welcome back. And
Hello, hello
Olivia,
again.
please pronounce your name and tell me.
Oliwia Ezayana.
Thank you. And tell us a little bit about yourself, since we may have missed it last
Okay,
week.
I guess those that watched part one already heard it, but about 5 years ago, I have experienced the awakening of my eternal ancient eye. I call it the eternal ancient eye rather than the third eye because of the fact that it's a little bit different. It's about the fact that our third eye, the opening of it, allows almost like your soul to be able to see through your eyes and to see beneath the 3D holographic reality. So, my experiences basically allowed me to retrieve my own incarnational memories and at the same time put me on a path where I felt the calling to assist other people with embarking on their own path towards remembrance. And ever since then, for about 3 years now, I have been assisting people on direct healing sessions in which everyone is basically working with themselves to find their own path towards their own healing and towards their own remembrance. And I'm also a teacher of the Plasma Regenesis Masterclass, in which I'm talking about Tartaria, plasma body healing, and also the eternal Urea body activation. So there's a lot of different interesting things that are basically worth discovering. But today our main topic is Tartaria.
Okay, and now, and I also want to talk about. I'm going to go into a little bit more detail about the fall of it, and then how we're going to restore it. But I, whenever I love these structures, I travel all over the world to be in them. And this is actually this is from Mosta in Malta, incredible dome, and the energy is just so. I mean, healing and high frequency, and I. I had I wrote about it in my book, the Infinite Human, which is right here. Oops, about my Kundalini experience with my twin soul, because we did a lot of exchanging of Christic codes and sexual alchemy, and so my Kundalini would rise like 7 feet above my head, and it was wonderful when it happened. But the minute I stepped out in the 3D world, it would start to fall because the frequencies were so low. But when we moved to Europe and I traveled around Europe, I'd walk into these cathedrals, especially around the dome or down the main aisle, and it would just rise up. So I was like energy barometer. And so I craved these high frequencies, because I would be, back in heaven, just like after, whenever we make love, I would meditate, and I'd be just, up in my Christ star and beyond, in the infinite source. So this is very fascinating. And we spoke about the origins of it coming, with the first seeding, but I wanted to just kind of just, have a conversation. That's why I do my talk show, because I love to have conversations with this, like this, with people, but I feel it's beneficial for other people to listen. So there's something called the Medusa effect that I just learned about. I even have Medusa, oops, right over there. And I think, and I just briefly mentioned to you at the break, that when of course, the cataclysm, they said under cataclysmic circumstances things get petrified. And I think Tara, of course, was much larger, and it was composed of our entire solar system. So when it was pulled through the black hole and spattered out, the part we're on, Earth, not Earth, but Earth that we're on now and the fallen harmonic universe was a fragment of that. And of course, everything was much larger, you know, larger, like I've seen petrified, dinosaur type, beings.
Yeah.
And of course the humans, and we see these huge buildings with these huge doors. So I think that is part, what we are seeing is the fragment inside of it. And I've also seen where there's very intricate designs, and people have said these structures were, like not necessarily limestone, because limestone holds a lot of crystals, but they were probably maybe crystalline structures with gold and jewels and all kinds of ornate things. But when they were sucked through, they petrified. So I don't know, what's your opinion about that?
Yes. So basically, I would when I would be looking into the elemental co-creation with my students, something came to me like where all these faces of the giants and are actually coming from, and like what are the mountains in itself.
Yes, exactly.
And something that came to me at that time, that these are actually the fallen giants of Tara and Gaia. Gaia as well, because it's almost like Tara is also an aspect of Gaia that fell. And that aspect of Tara was supposed to once again integrate itself, connect with its counterpart known as Hara. But that's another story. And they were supposed to once again become Gaia. So like we talk about Mother Gaia, but
ascending, but it was stuck.
Yes,
Their ascension.
it was supposed to reintegrate all the missing pieces that happened, because what happened to Gaia is that basically the core of Gaia, it literally split into half. A part of it was put under the buffer zone of Amorea, but the other one was basically, it fell into a black hole, and along with it, all these souls. So many of us are still
the lost souls of Tara, the lost souls
of Tara and the lost souls of Gaia, actually.
Okay.
Because that goes, as I said, this happened to Gaia, and then Tara was basically supposed to assist with the rescue of these souls that already fell on Gaia. So when we look into those giants that we see these days, giants that turned into stone, this could be referring to either the giants of Tara or the giants of Gaia, which are actually aspects of our consciousness. So if you find yourself just, taking a trip to the mountains and you feel like, oh, I've been there before, or like you start to feel those interesting electric vibrations going through your body, it might be literally that aspect of your large consciousness wanting to finally come back to you.
Yes. And, just when I walk around Palermo, there's huge doors, huge doors, and we see them everywhere. So, obviously these structures were not built for, little peeps, so we at that time were a much larger embodiment of creation,
Yes.
much
and
different.
Even on this planet Earth. Even on this planet Earth, we were still taller. We can see those images, and I don't think they were falsified. There's those images from the times of Tartaria where you can see the humans of a regular size, but you can, I don't know if you saw that, but there's someone who is like 2.5 meters tall. So,
yes. Well, I think originally when we were on Tara, before we got pulled through, of course, it was a much bigger planet, so we were much bigger. And then when we were fragmented and pulled through, there was still we were still large, just on a fragment. For us, it was a fragment. But then over time, I guess, as we were downgraded genetically, also, we just got
even though
smaller.
There's still some race lines that managed to keep that giant genome, if we want to call it this way. And that's why in times of Tartaria, there were the tall people and the smaller ones that, we are like the size of those smaller ones. And unfortunately, from my insights, those very tall people, they were not giants, but, they were much taller. They were basically completely executed during the holographic wars, which is the First and the Second World War. So that we don't even think that, we could have such potential.
Okay, so that brings me to the next question. I'm just getting into this, but if you don't mind, I'd love to hear your intuitive hit on this. But they talk about, well, what happened to the Tartarians, and they talk about these orphan trains, and then they talk about the Cabbage Patch Kids and all this. But I mean, it seems like they would, of course, invade or destroy the cultures, and then farm out the people either to insane asylums or just murder them, and then take the children. What's your what would you say about that?
I mean, there's so much to say here because I would say that what they were also doing is that they were moving people from their native lands to
Exactly, yeah.
the wrong places. I mean, that's
Yeah.
what the whole thing with the slavery was about, or basically like what was done to the Native American tribes. That the Native American tribes, they held the knowledge about Tartaria as well. And the part of that agenda against them was actually taking away their inheritance. Because they remember the times when everything was much different. So I would say that there has been like because what happened is that those Nomi gene carriers that are being spoken about these days, they were also seeded on Tartaria, and they were supposed to hold that encryption of that original great Tartarian empire to allow for, that, let's say, ascended timeline of unity to once again arise. So that hunting for indigos and the Nomi gene carriers was something that was also performed during the times of Middle and the Small Tartaria.
Wow,
So certain
fascinating.
children from this higher lineage of the Nomi gene carriers, they were basically being taken away and very often, really experimented on badly. This was also very much being performed during the holographic wars.
Okay. And I also that's fascinating. We'll come back to that, but I also get the sense that where the true the Nomi gene carriers and the Christic angelics and as you said in last week, everything was once Tartaria, the whole planet. So that of course was being taken out, but I feel like it was almost being replaced. I've seen just clips of people talking about incubator. Oh, sorry, Cabbage Patch or incubator children that were like actually clone children or something. I feel like it was repopulated with a lot of people that weren't, of course, it didn't carry or the Anunnaki, races. And I feel like it was like a flood of population either from that or they took they which goes on today now, which they did, for example, in the Middle East. They went to perfectly beautiful countries, destroyed them, and then created this whole refugee situation. When you have floods of people that have nothing, they flood into first, Europe and America and everything. And this is what led to further the downfall, which you talked about last time, about how the poor, the lower class, would rebel, like in the French Revolution or when the Tsar was taken out, against the royals, because, they had no bread, they had no food, but they had no food because their homelands were destroyed and they were just dumped, into the Tartarian lands with no resources. Well,
so my take on that would be something that I was talking about last week, where I said that the Hyperborean kingdom was first. So the original Tartarian people are Hyperborean people.
Which is the first seeding of the angelic race.
This is the third seeding of the angelic human race.
Okay.
This is the third seeding because, as I said, the first and the second seeding were based on the Turanisium angelic human genome from Tara, but during the third seeding, it was also based on that, but it was also upgraded so that our base template is not even 12, but 48.
Okay, so we're talking highly genetically encrypted souls.
Yes, and that's why we right now hold the power to overcome this entire nonsense. Otherwise, this would not be possible with just the 12 DNA strands.
Okay,
The 48 gives access to a larger spectrum of frequencies, such as the plasma or the urea body.
Okay, so we, whether you call us indigos or Dacia Depths or Aquashi or
You can give it all
Orpheans.
sorts of names, but that doesn't
Yes,
really matter. We
but
can just refer to it as Hyperboreans.
yeah, so we have reincarnated. We're here now, holding this high genetic encryption, holding the Nomi silver seed, holding the true timelines to, I say, be the change, or to remember our future, and to get us back onto the correct organic timelines. Would you say?
I mean, not
And
all of us, because what started to happen.
no, well, I say we because I
that-
figure if anyone's
yes.
listening to this, they've got to have
Yes,
this
I mean, all of us
encryption, or
listening
else.
to this, right? And right now there is also an option to, even if you don't have it, you can receive it. You can receive that coding if you desire through the potentials of the eternal host, which is coming through the Nomi seed within the planetary core. But what started to happen is that the Hyperborean genome started to be interbreeded with other race lines, and that degraded our 48-strand potential. And then those hybrids that were interbreeded with the Hyperborean genome, they started spreading throughout the planet. And the problem is that there were just a lot of them, because the Hyperboreans were very conscious of birth and how many of us are supposed to be on the planet. But throughout the interbreeding agendas, like we started birthing a lot of angelic humans that weren't exactly aligned with that original genome. And, the high amount of the hybrids led to them starting to overtake the original structures that were set. And then it was easier to influence them because of the misalignments within their DNA templates. They were more vulnerable to all sorts of energetic influence, also even from the higher dimensions. So that, era, for example, of the Middle Ages, where, everyone was kind of blind and everything was like really dark and really heavy. This is because of that degeneration of the angelic human genome, which was also a result of the plague, the Black Death epidemic that I was talking
So
about.
that was all on a false timeline. That was on the
Yes.
artificial time loop, which they're still trying to keep us in. So, so just for those who are listening, this is new to them, but they're like, oh yeah, I want to be part of that. I want to. So, what can you suggest to them if they want to really upgrade their genetics and to receive the crystal river fail-safe host, the plasma host, and to step up their their ascension process and be the change.
Exactly, be the change. So I would definitely recommend to connect to the energies that come from the Nomi seed. It's basically almost like, we can imagine it this way. The Earth's core has its core crystal, which is like, let's say, like a spark of the eternal self-consciousness of the planet. And then that crystal starts to emanate a certain radial field that looks like a rainbow bubble, which is the Nomi seed. So we can choose to connect to that core crystal of Earth as well as the Nomi seed. And this way we are bringing the eternal energies that are assisting us to also reawaken the same eternal self-potential within ourselves. So this is like the first step that I am working with my students, is also like circulating those rainbow plasmas through the personal DNA template in order to progressively reawaken it and also to realign any kind of distortions within it. Okay. And that also, the more of those DNA strands we activate, the more of that awakening memories is also coming to us.
Okay. So, let's just shift gears for a minute now and talk about what is this going to look like? Because we're referring to the work of Ashiana Dean, Anna Hayes, Ashiana Dean, Speaker One, and Ashiana Dean, and it's at arias.com if you want to, know a little bit more about that too. But I kind of like to connect the freedom teachings and what the Hostmasters teachings. So for a lot of people that are really into the Maharic Shield, I've heard Ashiana say you can just go pick up the Nomi seed and use that in your Maharic Shield so that's just a possibility. I'm about blending everything together because I feel like that's what the Crystal River Failsafe is doing as it enters into our time matrix. It's correcting and unifying and alchemizing everything, all the different pathways, the pathways to the Aurora Earth, the pathways to the Gaia Earth. Everything is being reset to divine perfection, on the Crystalla spiral of life. So how do you see this playing itself out? Like on a day-to-day basis. For me personally, as the veil lifts, we talked about the veil as the veil lifts, I'm seeing these Tartarian structures more and more, and I'm understanding their technology and how they work. So how do you see, the future of us who are getting onto the true organic timelines?
So the way that I see it is that the more of us are talking about this and the more of us are listening to this and even just start thinking about it, we are seeding all these ideas, all these thoughts into the collective raceline field. And that is allowing us to basically become more aware of all these structures that have been forgotten for a very, very long time. And as we are progressively reaching that awakening, we will automatically trigger the release of different technologies that are way more organic than what is right now being given to us. The energies that are actually not expensive at all, they are very cheap because you just take it and, it's like this, the free energy never runs out. You don't have to pay for water or electricity because it's always being provided to you at pretty much no cost in a way, if everything is being broadcasted planetary wise. So I would say that the more of us are actually going to these different planetary locations and we start to realign all these, small misalignments that we've been talking about, for example, inserting like the wrong bells into the, replacing the organic Tartarian bells that would, make the sounds that resonate with the Christic scale. They have been replaced throughout the Middle Ages with the ones that are actually releasing a Metatronic sound. As we are progressively coming to these areas and we are restoring them back to the right encryption, for example, by connecting a certain cathedral to the streams coming from the Nomi seed, we are almost like reawakening the energetic and the physical potentials of those buildings. So I would say in a way, we might feel the calling to travel, to go to certain places in order to assist them with, getting back to their original role.
It's so funny that you say that. I mean, not funny, but it's like just we're so in sync because and then biosyncing to the earth, that's something I've just been so led to in traveling now. I started the Infinite Human Tours and I'm doing a lot of tours and esoteric tours, and I've been doing that for years, but now it's taking on a whole new meaning and doing a lot of work that I just intuit when I go to a place. But I don't sing. I was kicked out of a choir, but when I go to these places, I'm just called to tone the Crystalla spiral in a way that's unique to me and ground into the Nomi scene and just realign the whole structure. And when I do it, it's very, very loud. and people respond very differently, but I just, I do it no matter what. So in Malta, they were like trying to throw me out, but here in Italy, they usually applaud. They think I'm an opera singer or something because the tones that come out of my through me is just not even me. It's like otherworldly. And I've done that all over the planet, and usually when I leave, there's a lot of release. Like I've literally saw when I was in Tulum, like smoke was it looked like a atomic bomb went off, and I'm kind of like, okay, time to leave now, because all the lower frequencies release, the fit hits the sham, so to speak. But then when I go back, maybe a year or two later, I've noticed there's much more of an alignment in that area, and the frequencies are so different. So I think we're all being called to interact in different ways to bring about this.
And at the same time, it also allows you to connect with the other aspects of self, with, let's say, your Tartarian aspect of yourself that might be literally singing through you in order to basically also give you certain codes into your DNA that you can later share to the cathedral or wherever you are. So this is also like a part of the personal activations that we are going through while we activate different locations on the planet.
Definitely, and I do have to give a little warning. And I've done some pilgrimages here in Sicily, and plan to do some in Malta. But I also do a lot of inward personal work. As just that's my thing. Rewriting your life story, going through the hero's journey. When you get into these places and you do reconnect with your alternate selves, like you said, there's been in these powerful, powerful places, especially like Malta was, really tough. There's just a lot of tragic stories there. I know there's so much, especially against the women, that have been done to traumatize us and to limit our power, our immense power. So you're going to be releasing. That's going to part of releasing it from the ley lines and releasing it from yourself. I think that's part of the job that's been done. But I don't know. I'm just seeing like if Earth is restoring, and I feel I started this talk show, the part 1 about how Earth is being reborn and how we're synthesizing, melding with the highest aspect of our Earth. I mean, it's like it's getting bigger or something. The Earth. I mean, I feel like it's going to have to clear the real estate. This sounds terrible, but I was thinking, because I've been going out and seeing people, they bought up everything, and even here they covered up this little corner that we used to do cultural events at, this greedy, egotistical thing of just covering all our planet. In Malta was the worst, with all these ugly coffin like uglification of the planet, modern condominiums, whatever you call them, and they're all over these ancient Tartarian structures. I feel like what we're seeing with the pyramids, with the discovery of that ancient city under the pyramids, it's all going to have to give way so that the true structures can once again be unburied and uncovered. What say you to that?
Yeah, so I think that is suggesting to us that there will be a lot of changes on a planetary level. And I've always seen that like certain lands will rise up, other lands will rise down. And I think that this will be a very interesting process to watch. I do not think that this will be like a reset that will wipe out humanity. But at the same time, since the planet has been stuck in this illusionary planetary prison bubble for so long, it needs to stand up on its feet again and reclaim back its sovereignty. So I do think there will be slight changes in the configuration of continents at some point, but it's not like it's going to be very tragic or catastrophic, not to like a very big extent, and it will allow for uncovering, for disclosure of certain lands, of certain cities that have not been seen before. I mean, we still have Atlantis underneath the Atlantic Ocean, and once that comes up to the surface, I do think there will be a lot of people very much interested in what those places actually are. So,
and our planet, though, is, like we said before, it's much larger. So if we're restoring it to its original template of Tara, Gaia, how do you see? I mean, I don't know if it's a fair question. I've been kind of fantasizing about myself, but how do you see it as we ascend in frequency and back to our proper harmonic universe? How do you see that manifesting in the physical around us?
So there is this theory among people who believe that Earth is flat. I do not believe that, but there's that part where they are talking about that ice wall that is surrounding the continents, and that ice wall is almost like creating that illusion of that planetary prison inside of which we are residing. And so they're almost like trying to show like, oh, we're stuck, and like there's no way out unless you break through the wall. So I actually do believe that.
But that's really more like the frequency, because I mean, I'm not a flat earther either, but yeah.
This is like, there is the frequency fence. And once we break out of that frequency fence, we will actually find ourselves on a much bigger planet, which I would say might be Terra, might be Gaia, or might be as far as Urea Earth, depending on which one of the host pathways you will actually align yourself with. You will find yourself on one of the aspects of these
Yes.
planets.
Yes, which frequency you're attuned to. Yes. And that's why I say to people, and I began this whole broadcast with, it's always an inside job. And as you clear out your lower frequencies and ascend, you're seeing this. You're seeing a whole different planet. Your reality is so different depending on what frequency you're attuning to. So it's always back to you, right?
It's always back to you. And also, as you raise your frequency, as they say, you might find yourself wanting to go to certain places on the planet, because I think we're gonna see that also, like with the dueling spirals, that certain places are going to be more Metatronic, certain places are going to be more Christic before all of this kind of clears out. So some of us might go to a more challenging locations in order to clear them and to kind of process that frequency. The others will go to those places which are literally going to have certain ascension portals open at some point. So I think that overall it's going to be a very interesting process.
So it really depends on your story,
It does, yes.
uniquely your
It
story.
also depends on your incarnational history, to which places you were originally assigned to. Because what is happening right now with this whole immigrant crisis, and I've been seeing that, spending a couple of months in Germany, I could sense that I'm not in Germany, that I'm in some kind of like a hybridized land, because people are coming, they are unconsciously anchoring their codes. And it's like, this is not Germany anymore. This is like a combination of different races. And because of many magical and religious overlays, this is just not the right encryption that they are bringing in. So that whole immigrant crisis is actually supposed to bring people to the wrong grids in order to attempt to, disable certain meridian lines and reverse them. So it's all a part of the larger agenda.
And with that said, also, it's becoming more and more. I mean, when we were all Tartaria, there was no country, so we could freely move about, of course, and the whole passport thing. And, a lot of people who I'll just say, let's say light workers, or, whatever, the movers and the shakers, the highly encrypted, star seeds need to be in certain places, and they're making it harder and harder to get passports and harder to get visas to keep the right people from going to do the grid work or the places they need to be, exchanging codes. So they're really trying to hold that back, but I don't think they're going to be able to.
No.
Yeah, and now tell us about you, because you said you're going to be moving to Russia for a while.
Yes, this will be my residence, because of certain areas that do need to be activated there. We can just take a look at Moscow, which is the Stargate. So this was like a calling I've had, and the visa process has been very, very challenging. But
yes, like I said, it's hard it must be hard, visas and permits.
It's incredible, because I've had my experience of spending a couple of weeks in Belarus, which is, a country neighboring to Russia. That is almost like, it's as if those two countries are creating a union. That's how unified they are together. And this was like a beautiful land. I mean, it felt so organic. The food was extremely organic as well. And the consciousness of the people there, because, the fact is that I think the president of Belarus was the only one who said that this entire thing that happened in 2020, I'm just going to say, is absolute nonsense. And the people there didn't, stab themselves in their arm. And you can sense that in that consciousness, that everyone is happy, everyone is very joyful, and everyone is kind. And you can feel that very, very warm energy among that small nation. And you can definitely sense a difference in frequency between the people of the Eastern Europe and Western Europe, where that entire disease hasn't really spread throughout Eastern Europe. There's a lot of people that I'm working from different countries, like Bulgaria, Romania, Russia, and they are basically having that Tartarian consciousness very, very much developed within them. So it's interesting to see that it's actually starting, that spark of awakening is actually starting to come from the East, and it's going to eventually spread through the West.
And I've been saying for a long time, I think a lot of us are being called to go to certain places.
Yes.
I know I've worked really the worst of worst for years. It is my time. And I think for many of us, it's time to, to move up and hold the higher frequencies, and so we're being guided to move. If you're being guided to move, pay attention to that. And I just want to talk about one thing that I'm being guided to do so much is with Infinite Human Tours, to start bringing esoteric tours where we go to certain places and we work both inwardly, on our own, clearing our own distortions and alternate identities that are associated with those places, and adjusting. I think a lot of the grid lines are really cleaning up right now, but there's some adjustments in realigning to the nomicine and the Crystallis spiral that we will be doing as we travel around, and visiting these Tartarian structures, because I just find them fascinating. And as a prelude to that too, I just decided to start a whole new. I've been so heavy during these past 5 years because it's been really intense, and the talk show. I mean, I think the last time we talked about sexual misery and trauma and clearing trauma, and there's a lot of that has to be done. But I feel like, just for me, I'm just getting so much more in these organic timelines, and it's just so blissful and joyful and just really fun. And I think that's part of our job too, is to just be infinite and be joyful and to share it. So I just started with Kiki, my little Pomeranian. I just downloaded it today because I think we're in a real pivotal to upgrade time. Massive upgrades are happening. And so I was starting to do videos because I really love to do videos. I, had a film school, and I'm a filmmaker, storyteller at heart. So I started something called Infinite Adventures with Kiki and Me, where I dress her up in a tutu or something, and we go, visit like ancient Tartarian palaces and stuff. And the other day, it was just to give people the feel, because we were in this ancient Tartarian palace. It was so beautiful, and you could just see how, the chandeliers were just, of course, the antennas would pull in the energy, and the chandeliers that were crystals, and it wasn't, it was electricity, but the natural electricity that illuminated the crystals in the chandeliers, and and the whole place was, in this high, beautiful frequency that was so healing to our organic divine templates, and kept us in the high frequencies. And then I stepped outside, and then there was this 5G tree, and it was just so ugly. And then you could just feel the distortions, almost like the hertz, the ones that heal your frequency, the 432, and the ones that destroy it, the 440, I think. Yeah. So it's like, this, and I think people need to start seeing and feeling the difference and the grandeur and beauty of that old Back to the Future organic timeline. So they are choosing every minute, the masses, which timeline they want to be associated with, the AI timeline or the ancient Tartarian divine technology.
Definitely.
What say you? I love to hear your opinions. What do you think about those two choices?
So what I would say here is that, just like we talked previously, when we start to go to those different areas, the memory that comes back. And I would say that at some point we might start to again build beautiful cathedrals like that, because it's kind of like the contemporary architecture, just to kind of also see what is the kind of comparison between what we have these days with those, massive skyscrapers, and what we had before with the beautiful cathedrals, where what is happening is that the skyscrapers, they are almost like, they lock us in a cube.
Yes.
Right? It's as if we're always inside of the box. And, there's the saying, like, you need to think outside of the box. So you need to step out
Bingo.
of these buildings. So I have always been just feeling really, really bad whenever I would have to, stay in a hotel with like multiple floors. That's been like an absolute disaster.
Hmm.
But I remember, and you most likely were in that cathedral many times in Florence, where it's kind of like you don't even have to be inside of the building just yet, but you can already feel how your plasma bodies and the urea bodies start to kind of interact.
Yes.
Because if that building can feel you and you can feel the consciousness of those buildings, because it's almost like it always feels to me as if they have their own spirit.
Yes, definitely. I'm always getting called back to Florence. I mean, how many? I might go back to the States for a year or two, but I always ended up back in Florence. And
Yeah.
the Duomo was just something.
I
It's
stayed in
just.
Florence for 3 days and I was there
Mm.
like with my little brother. He was really frustrated with me on that trip because I only wanted to stay around the cathedral. I was there like around the cathedral for like 3 days, just constantly feeling, drawn to it, or like going to a restaurant that is right next to it so I can look at it.
Yeah.
So it's been like a really special time.
Well, all I can say to those who are listening and this resonates with them, stay tuned to my website, infinitehuman.com, because I will be offering some, weeks and weekends. I used to do a month for film students to come from all over the world, and they would come there and they would make their films. We would visit the Uffizi, and we would use the art and energy and alchemy of Florence, and we would go into the huge museums with incredible art. And now I know why I love the art. It was Tartarian art. It was ancient art. And I have them choose a statue or a painting, or whatever, that symbolizes them now as they walk in, like at the beginning of their journey. And then it symbolizes their higher self, their shadow self, and then how they want to be their ascended self, and then they would create monologues, and they would put it together into films, and we even brought our stuff to the Cannes Film Festival. So I really am missing doing things like that even with the older gals too, because the mothers always wanted their children to do it, but I think they really wanted to do it themselves. So I want to get started with that again. And I just think there's so many wonderful things to that doors that are opening, for all of us right now. And it's time for us to really express our creativity and follow those passions and those intuitive nudges. It might be just a small thing, like to take out, buy some paints and a canvas and paint or draw or start writing, keeping a diary, because those are huge, and they're going to bring you to the fullness of who you are, and onto this higher expanded consciousness of the proper timelines. It's going to create another future for you, an optimal future.
And if we put our individual memories together, we will create that collective story, that actual history that we are looking for.
Exactly. And conversations like this I think are so powerful, because just listening to them, it's like opening little portals in your mind and freeing you to reclaim your memories of how powerful and how great of our greatness, of how great we are, as divine, angelic, infinite human beings, and what a great culture we had. The biggest trick that they've done, and I just want to, these resets. Okay, reset. We did this recent reset, and if you're not familiar with the script, and I think David Icke is so good at exposing the script, we just went through another reset. That's what 2020 was all about, to reset our world even more away on the Fibonacci spiral, away from the true crystal spiral, into a more even fallen artificial world that is meant to just slide into phantom. And that's the agenda that's playing out right now, which I think is fizzling out, because this is a 9-year, and I think all these timelines are coming to surface to to fizzle out. But as they fizzle out, people are like, well, what do we hold on to? What's real? What's true? Well, this is what's true. These are the organic timelines, and they're inside your memory. They're inside your DNA. And the more you clear out the miasmic lower frequencies, the more you're going to remember who you are, and remember and not buy into the BS that they're telling you that, oh, there's always going to be conflict. There's always duality, and unity consciousness is singularity. You have to all be the same, and that's how you find unity. No, we can be great, beautiful individuals with these magnificent, wealthy, abundant buildings that generate all this kind of energy. And those palaces didn't have bathrooms either, because the Tartarians were, they were breatharians. They didn't eat it. They didn't, have food. The original ones, that fell.
Yes.
So yeah, just talking about the reset, because, a reset is something that happens like every 100 years, every century or something. They've been resetting us further and further off the organic timelines, further down into spiraling down the Fibonacci into phantom. Do you want to just mention that we're winding up now?
I mean, there's been multiple resets. I would say that, like, the latest one, indeed, we can look at it that it was 2020. The most recent one, from my perspective, were the two world wars that are referred to as the holographic wars, because these were basically the attempts to erase all the knowledge possible about Great Tartaria, after basically the humanity experienced the mud flood, and kind of try to put things together. So every single one of these resets was supposed to, kind of take us back in time, almost to the Middle Ages, where we don't have an access to all these technologies. So right now we think that we have the most modern society ever existing, but this is actually very far from the truth. And I would say that looking at all these buildings, as long as we are open-minded, we can actually see that humanity used to be much greater than we can possibly imagine.
So breaking the mind control of we're the most technologically advanced, and merging human with machine, and putting that chip in your brain, and getting into the cryptocurrency, and that's going to save us. I mean, we really have to not buy the bad copy, because that is a really bad copy of what we had.
Exactly. So I think that, the discoveries of those underground complexes of Egypt, that already brings a certain spark of awakening to the collective consciousness. Even though I have also seen someone on Facebook posting an excerpt from the book from, I think, like late 19th century, where they were basically describing the same complex. So the thing is that it's like we have all these books that we can find the knowledge within them already, but it feels like a lot of these books that could tell us maybe the truth about Tartaria or other civilizations, it feels like they are literally under this spell, like the almost like the spell of invisibility, so that we cannot access them. So conversations like this also allow us to finally start getting to the right resources, so that we can find also certain sources that can confirm our insights, our experiences, our visions.
Yes. I was just, thanks for the note from someone who just said something, but I'm almost thinking though, I'm thinking about buying, something, a Tartarian structure or something, and restoring it here. And I'm thinking, the future of real estate might be people, where they buy something and then they just destroy it and dig. Just get rid of the top structures, because they're going to find the true value. Because I believe below every inch of us are massive ancient structures with technology and all kinds of things, and that's where the real gold is. That's where the real real estate is. So So, okay, thank you so much for coming. We'll have to have you back because you're just fascinating. I mean, every word is just so rich and sparks memories. I know in my mind, and I'm sure many of us, of you who are listening. So. Oliwia, thank you so much for coming. And just tell us again briefly how people can get in touch with you.
So first of all, thank you so much for inviting me here, and you can find me on my YouTube channel under the same name, Oliwia Ezayana. I also have my personal website, ezayana.pl, so you can find me also over there. And you can just also just Google my name, and I find all sorts of different videos and the shows that I have been on. I'm also doing the personal sessions, and I'm also basically selling a lot of different workshops that contain the self-healing techniques. So if you feel like you would like to reconnect more with your true authentic self, there's also lots of resources that I'm offering online. So I highly recommend you to check out my website.
Okay. And I'll have to come over to Russia and visit you once I get my Italian passport. I don't think I can go there as American.
I think that would be a problem.
Yeah. All right.
So,
Well, thank you so much. And we'll see you next time. And I just want to say goodbye to you. Thank you so much for joining us. And next week we'll have another exciting show. I'm not sure what it is yet because I get my downloads, but I do think I'm going to be talking a lot about the timelines. The illusion of time is coming up for me, but I'm usually told what to do, just like a few days before. So, and everything I have is on my website, www.infinitehuman.com. If you want to know more about some of the tours that I'm offering, stay tuned because it's going to be exciting. I feel like there's a whole lot of interesting stuff, and on my YouTube channel I'll be posting some of our fun adventures, infinite adventures with Kiki and me, and more visits to Tartaria and Tartarian structures. And I have some on there already from Malta and Italy and all over. All right, ciao for now, and thank you for joining me. Bye.